It's decorating with Dunkin'.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, and look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in a Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer. It's decorating with Dunkin'.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, and look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in a Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.
This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are only a couple of weeks away before Kris Kringle and those wonderful reindeer ride across the skyline and present us gifts of basketball galore. Other than that, man, if you're in New York City, that's probably the best you can hope for. That and maybe the Rockefeller tree, because everything else from this point forward, when we talk about basketball, probably has nothing to do or has any affiliation with the New York Knicks. And of course, we will get into why. But other than that, man, everything is, as my man Shaw says, Gucci and super clean. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw, as if our listeners...
It's decorating with Dunkin'.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, and look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in a Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.
Didn't think we were going to have this topic of conversation today.
Well, you know me, brother. I'm excited to get right into it. And, our boy Duke Nukem is listening in. It's about this. A lot of the conversation is going to be about these New York Knicks, as you alluded to, and the lumps of coal that they've been giving their fans for years upon years upon years, especially when it comes to the performance on the court. But a lot of great conversation that we're going to be having around the unfortunate firing of David Fizdale. And then we'll be getting into some other topics as well, too, which, I'm excited about because trade season is about to open up, bro.
Just about. I will say this much, though. Maybe in some way, this could be an awakening, kind of like when we had to read the book, Christmas Carol, right? Like this may actually be an awakening, not just for New York Knicks fans, but this is an awakening for the NBA. This could be an awakening for literally anyone who really cares about the sanctity of basketball in New York, because it's there. It's well beyond that point. Enough is enough already. We'll get into all of that, but clearly, Shaw, there has to be an intervention. There really has to be some form of an intervention that needs to take place. So obviously our big topic of conversation is the unfortunate firing of head coach David Fizdale with the New York Knicks. And there's so many storylines that we will dig into with regards to that situation. And then a little bit later on, people are not paying attention, but hey, man, it's that pre-trade opening part of the year, right? Just before we get to the trade deadline, there are numerous names who are now available on the trade market per se. So with the news about Kevin Love possibly being open to the market, does that change things about some of these people that are now available on the market? We will dig into that in this week's episode of The Baseline. So once again, be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. You know where to find us. Whatever platform you're using to listen to your favorite shows, songs, whatever, we should be on there. So as always, find the Baseline NBA podcast, add us to your playlist, kick back, relax, allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things happening in the association. You know how we do, you know how we roll. Let's talk Fizdale here on The Breakdown.
Time to break it
I break it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for The Breakdown. Callie Warrenshaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for The Breakdown clearly is regarding the situation that took place really a few days ago with reference to the New York Knicks and the firing of their head coach, David Fizdale. Now, let's be real. David Fizdale was dealt a bad hand, okay? Clearly, he didn't get off on the right foot as far as, or maybe he just didn't even find his footing as being the head coach for the New York Knicks. I know from some of my personal friends and people who are diehard Knicks fans, they never bought into David Fizdale being hired as the head coach. And I can certainly understand that. When a name like Mark Jackson is still available, many people believe that he should have been the head coach for the New York Knicks. Obviously, you know, everyone's having their resurrection thoughts about, you know, Van Gundy being the head coach. You know, listen, I think now more than ever, we can dispense with all of the ideas of who we think should have been the head coach. Because no matter who the head coach really would be for the New York Knicks, they will never stand a chance at being able to coach this basketball team and to be able to help change the culture of this basketball team in a way that allows people to appreciate this team and also the organization and what they're trying to do. Because the way that they fired David Fizdale, Shaw, was just absolutely outrageous and really sheds, once again, another poor light on the organization's mentality and their approach, not just on how they handle the players and how they handle the coaches, but just how they present it to the fan base that spends millions of dollars for a quality product to be on that basketball court on a nightly basis.
This can go such a variety of different ways when you think about this organization and their ineptitude over the course of, 20 years now or so. They just haven't really been able to get back to a space where they've been truly, truly relevant. And that, I think, is the most underlying unfortunate part of this entire situation. And with Fizdale, it's a mixed bag on some folks where they think, you know, was he dealt a bad hand in terms of the roster itself? Sure. Did he handle everything the way that he could have? Probably not. In the best way he could have? Probably not. But to your point, the Knicks, they could give two craps about any of it. They kind of, in essence, make him a martyr in the way that they handle his firing, you know, shaking his hand and all that stuff, like, you know, before he practices and then after the practice, you know, kind of letting him go. Like, all that stuff, it seems shady. And I know the players have kind of taken up for him. I know Morris specifically was really kind of on board and saying this is not his fault. This is something that we need to fix, especially to some earlier losses. But we all know how this business goes. We understand the construct that is in place, and it's always the coach who's going to be the first person to hang when things go south. They never look at the players. They never look at the general manager or the ownership. But we all know that is what the issue is here right now. And unfortunately for Fizdale, 4-18 record. Last two games, he gets beat by like a combined 80 points or something like that. Just ridiculous effort from his team and his roster. And yeah, he could have been better, but the Knicks definitely handled this one in the wrong way.
So there's so many different ways that we can go about this, Shaw. The first thing that I just want to highlight more so before we talk about the management of the New York Knicks and specifically Steve Mills and Scott Perry, because I have some things to say about these dudes. Okay. We'll get to that in a few moments, but I want to highlight something important as it pertains to David Fizdale. Okay. 104 games. His record was 21-83. Now take what you will from that. Okay. Clearly it does not show that. And then you really also have to take into consideration his struggles when he was the head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies as well, too. Right. To me, this is a setback for David Fizdale in the sense that I don't know how much confidence and urgency there will be in looking at him for a possible head coaching position come this next season or maybe the season after that. You know how we usually talk about there's some guys that when they take on that head coaching, mantle that not only are they there to, meet certain expectations that they are putting out in front of the media for that fan base and for the organization, but they have to exceed it in some different ways because they are also making up for deficiencies that aren't being discussed and talked about unless you're like a sports insider for that organization, for that team. They're making up for a lot of things that clearly is not written. It's like silently written in their, their job description. Okay. So the thing about David Fizdale, where I feel bad in this sense, is the 21-83 record. While we know he was dealt a real faulty hand with the personnel and players that he's had to work with, the fact that the way that he was losing games this season specifically made it feel like no matter what he was doing, it was not good enough for them to go out and execute in a way where it looked like it was competitive. Even if we're saying that some of the players are bad players, whatever the case may be, you don't get blown out as many times as the Knicks have been blown out already in the course of this season. Most teams that go through these struggles, they probably go through maybe 3, 4, 5 blowouts, maybe at best. 20 plus blowouts already, close to double digits for the New York Knicks is really unacceptable. So for a head coach, it says that you're not communicating to these guys and you're not presenting them with a sense of urgency to not get blown out the way that they've been. And that's one of the things I wanted to highlight, in the sense that for David Fizdale, who I think is a good coach, I just think that this was not good in the light that if you want to ever talk about him being a head coach again, it's going to be such a long uphill climb for him.
Well, you couldn't say any better than, and I would probably take it a step further. I don't know that he is a good coach. I think these last 2 stops here in Memphis and in New York have shown us a lot about him, and I'm not trying to be down on him. I think as a person, and what he does, I think when he really is kind of rooted with some players, he can get through and he can communicate. But these 2 stops have been atrocious, really and truly. So it's like, hey, fool me once, you know what I mean? Fool me twice. I'm not quite sure right now with Fizdale, and I hate to say this, and I want to give everybody all the chances in the world, but some guys are just better in that second seat as that assistant and not as the lead guy. He talks an amazing game. I believe him when he speaks. I believe he believes everything he's saying, and that he's made of, and he wants his players to try and be better, and he preaches defense and he preaches hard work. I believe all of those things, but for some reason it hasn't resonated in the 2 stops that he's been in, especially in the second seasons of those where he's getting dismissed early part of the season. So I think you're right. It might be a long time before we see Fizdale again in that head chair again. He may need to kind of go back to the drawing board a little. And go on somebody's bench. Well, look at Ty Lue. He's sitting right next to Doc Rivers again, back to where he first started. So Fizz may have to look at maybe the Miami Heat and say, hey, Spo, maybe I'm willing to kind of come back down here and kind of, sharpen up my shed here a little bit, sharpen up my tools here a little bit before I go back and take that head coaching role yet again somewhere else.
Well, and I also believe as well, too, Shaw, that the only thing that David Fizdale really was latching onto as far as credibility goes, that he has that potential still, was that that I don't want to call it a meltdown, but that take that for data moment. You know what I'm saying? He had a Denny Green moment that I think in any other sports forum, they'll be looking at him as like a crazy black head coach who done lost it. But in that moment, he was elevating the idea that he was about the players, and in a moment where coaches and players have been at that time, you know what I'm saying? There was a little bit of clashing going on where you can see that players have their own agenda and coaches are getting thrown under the bus. Here you got a head coach who's coming to a very volatile situation, the end of the grit and grind, era, so to speak. And he elevates this team. He gets them in a position where they're going to participate in the playoffs. And he just basically unloads and says, I'm looking at this, man. He's like, don't tell me this, that, and the third. Take that for data. You know what I'm saying? And that, to me, I think resonated with maybe some other organizations who are on the fence about whether or not they could totally buy into David Fizdale for a second term or second opportunity in offering him a head coaching position. But I agree with you, Shaw. Where I thought that David Fizdale would hang his hat was more so on the fact that he could get these guys to come in and play better defense, play, hustle, and give you a little bit more. But clearly that means nothing right now in the climate of this NBA if you're being blown out by 20 points, literally like your blowout losses are 20 plus points per night. Like that's just unacceptable. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing that you can't say where, yes, it's on the players, but you got to also look at this as well too and say, who are you putting out on this basketball court to allow this to be going on? And if you're David Fizdale, if it means that you have to get grimy on a team, if you got to throw players under the bus, you got to call them out. I mean, do it. Do whatever it is that you have to do, not for self-preservation of your job, but self-preservation of the face that you have control of this basketball team. And he just never really exemplified that. He seemed more of a tempered down version of what I would have expected to see him coming from Memphis to a team that is completely out of whack when we're talking about the New York Knicks.
Well, it almost seems laughable now when you think about coming into the season, how some thought this could be a playoff team. Like, oh, well, maybe these parts can maybe work with our 5,000 power forwards. And, Fiz is a defensive-minded coach, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all blown up. It's all blown up. They're the worst team offensively, one of the worst teams defensively, have the worst net rating in the entire NBA, especially after those two monumental losses, especially with that last one coming at the hands of Denver. This is just a team that is going nowhere and going nowhere fast. And now they bring in Mike Miller, and as an interim coach, and we'll see how that ends up working out, for the rest of the season or for however long he's in that seat as well too. But this Knicks for Fizdale just did not accomplish anything that even close to what it intended to do. And yeah, he's definitely to blame. But again, this just goes to the years and years and years of ineptitude again from the management itself, which continues to always kind of get a pass. Like, we know what it is, and media knows what it is. Fans know what it is. Players know what it is. Hence why a lot of free agents don't go there. Yet everybody still has a job.
Okay, so all right. So now you kind of rolled in what we really need to be addressing our focus and our attention to. And you like to say, Shaw, keep it 100. I'm going to keep this 100. Steve Mills and Scott Perry have represented literally the part that I feel like is what kills our desire and motivation to really buy into the whole premise of putting faith in teams. You know what I'm saying? Not the players, but in teams. Because when you have people handle things in this kind of way, it's exactly what exudes that distrust factor. It's exactly what exudes this real, like this beneath the surface animus. You know what I'm saying? There's a griminess to what happened here. Okay, you don't like David Fizdale, fine, I get it. But do you not learn? You know what I'm saying? If you are a New York Knicks, if you're a New York sports organization, forget Knicks, you're a New York sports organization. Do you not recall that the New York Mets did the same nonsense to Willie Randolph? And do you not see the visceral reaction that people get when they see things handled in this kind of way? And I feel like this thing happens in two sides, right? The first side of it is where you insult our intelligence by saying they'll get over it. Right. It's cool if you'll say we'll get over it if what you're saying you did it and it was justified. But since the team sucks, there's no justification for how you handle this. Then the other side to this is, well, whatever excuse you're going to give us on why you did this the way that you did. And what I'm saying is David Fizdale has practice that Friday, talks to the players, goes on his business as if he is still the head coach for the New York Knicks. And is only then after he meets with the players, he speaks to them and everything, is when you choose that now is the time that you're going to fire this guy. You don't do it the night before. You don't do it during, where there's a couple of days to let this digest for people to understand, kind of get it under the whole thing. You try to bum rush this thing through as if, hey, man, it's just something passing that we might find on the wire, but it ain't no big deal. Right? It just smacks the face. It just smacks in the face of people of how ignorant the New York Knicks organization is, how Mills and Perry are completely ignorant of the situation, and how you have now even brought more shame to an organization that you're responsible for, just in the way that you handle this situation with David Fizdale. We're not questioning that he wasn't qualified. We're questioning that even if the man was not qualified, this is how you handle something like this? Who would want to come here? Forget players, but who would want to work underneath those circumstances? You cannot find anybody that wants to put their best foot forward for the sake of the organization, for the sake of James Dolan, knowing that this is how you're going to handle moving people on, laying people off, trading people away. This is egregious. And the fact that they knew coming into this, don't tell me you don't know the history. They knew the history. The fact that you knew this and you still did it, to me, is just insulting in itself.
Part of what I don't like about the overall tenor of it is it's just the roster construction this specific season, right? So we came into this year and on our Atlantic Division preview and said, well, I'm not the biggest Kevin Knox guy. Don't you kind of need to see what he's about? You know, how does getting Randall, Morris, Portis, and Gibson help Knox's development?
I know I said something like that. I know you said something like that, right? We said a couple things about that. Yeah. Maybe they need to listen to the Baseline NBA podcast more often.
Well, not just because at the end of the day, I just feel like a year is too soon to give up on anybody. And while you may not think Knox is good, I'm not here, campaigning for Kevin Knox. I'm not the biggest Knox guy, but to me, it's just, again, your roster construction, shoot yourself in the foot. This isn't even a mid build, whatever the hell this was that they tried to do with this construction. Like I said, I could defend the size of the contracts, and I can defend maybe one, maybe two of those guys. But when you get four of them, it just seems redundant and stupid at this point. It doesn't make any sense at all. And to me, they shot themselves in the foot from the very beginning by not allowing to really figure out what these guys can yield and who they can potentially be. The only person getting consistent minutes is RJ Barrett. Billy Keenan now is kind of still works his way into this thing. And while I don't think he's a particularly great basketball player, he's improved himself. I mean, he's still only 21 years old. Knox is 20 years old. Alonzo Trier, who played for him a lot last year, really kind of at the end of the bench, not really seeing much time. Mitchell Robinson probably should have been the starting center, but that didn't really work out. I know he had some injuries to begin the year too, and that kind of set him back. But you just got to be looking at these young guys and giving them all the minutes they can handle. And really at this point now in lieu of Fizdale being the scapegoat for your failed ineptitude and ridiculous roster construction, well, do you give Mike Miller now the ability to kind of go out here and say, all right, let's really kind of take a look at these young guys? And, in our next segment, we'll be talking about but we're going to be talking about guys who can be moved. So some of these contracts now can be moved, but they haven't acquitted themselves well at all, the players themselves. So who wants them?
But let's be,
you know what I mean? I think the only person.
But Shaw, let's be perfectly clear. Mike Miller is not there to do anything except the bidding of Steve Mills and Scott Perry. Okay. Now, we don't know what was said or probably, what was said, what was not said, but let's just look at the way things have happened, right? You get rid of David Fizdale. You also get rid of Keith Smart, right? So clearly, whatever was going on and how this was handled certainly didn't sit well with Keith Smart. So it's kind of like the Friday Night Massacre, so to speak. Oh, you're not on board? All right, we're going to move you along. Anyone else? Ready, got something to say, got an issue, got a problem. I don't see Mike Miller, saying to himself, oh, well, I don't really feel comfortable with it. He's going to capitulate, right? He's going to capitulate.
Oh, yeah, he's not there to.
But I'm not expecting any innovation from Mike Miller's part. Anything, I guess what I'm saying is, Shaw, is anything that Mike Miller does, they are calling the shots about this basketball team. And I just think that if we, as a podcast and anyone else that's covering what's going on with the New York Knicks moving forward, until we see this dynamic completely change, meaning Perry gone, Mills gone, Dolan somehow is disappeared, from off existence in the realm of where we associate anything basketball related. Until any of that happens, nothing that happens from Mike Miller's part is resonant of Mike Miller per se, as much as it's the real voice is those two dudes right now that are still running this team.
So I guess the question now leads to, who makes sense And I don't know if there is a right answer because of the roster construction. Why would a Mark Jackson want to come into this? What is he getting out of that? And to your point, again, just not only players, but what big name coach or just even up and coming young coach is going to want to say, you know what, let me go here and give this a shot. This is trash, and
the only way that's going to happen,
hold on.
Okay.
Their coaching turnover has been just so absurd in the last years. Like D'Antoni and Mike Woodson were the last guys to make it past 2 or 3 years. You've had Fisher, you've had Kurt Rambis, you've had Hornacek, and now you've had Fizdale. And it's just consistently turning over where you can't get a system in place. You can't build any type of culture in place to build the roster. And I think it was something crazy like Ntilikina might be the longest tenured Knick on the team right now as is. This is just a complete crap shit show from this organization on all levels and all fronts. And there's nobody else to blame but Dolan at the very, very top. And then followed by, as you alluded to, Scott Mills and Steve Barry.
Okay, but here's my thing, Shaw. To answer all of your questions, okay? Because there's been speculation and rumors that the Knicks really would love to see Masai Ujiri come in. And my thing is this. If I'm Masai, not saying that he needs to involve himself in this situation, but even if you just want to kind of shake things up, why don't you put that pressure on James Dolan and say, what would you offer me? What would you give me to come and help make your organization relevant again? Right? Because the only way any serious-minded head coach that wants to take over this New York Knicks organization cannot possibly want to do this under the helm of Mills, Perry, and Dolan. Right? We've already seen this mistake happen before when Dolan decided to go with Phil Jackson. Right? There seems to be this thing where we're not recognizing the people who do know how to turn organizations around. And maybe we need to start filtering those type of teams out and really start calling them out for this, right? Enough of the fact that they've got billions and dollars to throw around and to sweep under the rug the faultiness in how the organization is being handled. We've seen what Masai can do, right? And if you're the New York Knicks and you're really serious about winning, you really want to see this team finally get a championship sometime in this century, you go after Masai Ujiri. Seriously. Screw Mills. Screw Perry. Screw anybody that has a question about the fact that you're going to go after the best of the best. No more of this, dancing around type of thing. And then we'll see what really happens. There's been speculation, Shaw. I think they're saying that Becky Hammond may be interested in this. Why would she want to come and work underneath? First of all, I think she would do a total disservice to the whole perception that a first female head coach to play would want to come under this type of, zoo-like situation going on for the New York Knicks. There is no way that her coaching acumen, her knowledge, and the situation that she presents is going to elevate what already stinks to high hell with the New York Knicks. So I would not, if I'm Becky Hammond, I would not want to do it. And to your point, if I'm Mark Jackson, what incentive do I really have about wanting to come into this situation? The only thing that you're holding on for the idea of being the head coach for the Knicks is because you used to play for the New York Knicks. But my God, once they start throwing out meta world pieces of possible head coach, if I'm Mark Jackson, I'm insulted by that premise. I'm insulted by the fact that you're telling me I got to compete for a head coaching position and I'm doing that next to meta world peace. You got to be kidding me. Like, that to me is where I think, that's how bad it is with the New York Knicks right now.
Yeah, but you can't go too far down that road. I mean, these are just rumors that some fans and some media people are throwing out there because these are the usual suspects who come up. And the Knicks' infatuation with Masai is real, but the realistic aspect of that is to get a Masai away from Toronto, you're going to have to give up assets that you don't have. Therefore, setting Masai even further back if he were to come and want to come to the organization, because you have to give up draft pick compensation and things of that nature. And then what are you doing? It's going to take you even 3 years to get out of that hole. And while Masai can work some magic, why leave a situation that you're in with Toronto right now, even, as a team that's competitive, really competitive in the Eastern Conference, even more so than we thought they would be without Kawhi this season. So I think the Knicks can sell that boat up the river. Like, that's a done deal. Masai is not coming. They would have to give up too much to make it happen. But Dolan,
let me ask you this question.
But
let me ask you this question. Please, let me ask you this question. When have you seen the New York Knicks even given you the inclination that is what they really, really want to do? Most of the time we do this when it comes to the players, right? Like, we're gonna sell the state literally to get LeBron James. Are they really doing that? Is there any inclination that you've seen over the last few years, Shaw, with the exception of Phil Jackson, which don't tell me between Masai Ujiri and Phil Jackson that there was any comparison? Phil Jackson has no experience in an executive role. He should have been there as a head coach. What I'm saying is, when the New York Knicks are being presented a true opportunity to really change things, when have you seen them actually throw the gauntlet down?
I don't know if they have it in them, and with Dolan being the guy that seems to be the immovable object, there can only go as he goes and as he allows.
Which is why I say there should be an intervention.
Yeah. So while he claims to be, hands off in terms of the approach, what Perry and Mills are doing, we all know that that's not really true. Like, we know what that is. So until he's willing to kind of give up this ship, or really, as you alluded to, maybe he does try to throw caution to the wind and throw everything at trying to get a smart executive who really understands the landscape and can try to take this from the ground up. The problem that I think this Knicks team has had, with the exception of maybe last year, really, is that they've been so stubborn in terms of trying to feel like they still needed to compete. They didn't really want to tank and really rebuild unless it was last year when they thought they had a chance at Zion, and then, hey, their old Knicks luck kicked in and that didn't work out. And while RJ Barrett is obviously a very nice player and still is very capable of growing into a certain role for them, the rest of this roster is just it's not good. And I think, when we get to our next segment, the Knicks are going to be another topic of conversation because of all the guys they did sign and all the guys that they're going to be movable. But as I was alluding to a little bit earlier on, who wants them? Who's going to want any of the guys who haven't given any effort this year and haven't played up to any to par at all? Maybe a guy like Ellington because of his shooting. You maybe get something like that. Maybe Bullock, I think, has been in and out of lineup as well too. But I don't know who's going to take a chance on Randall. Maybe Poppy Portis. Like, this team is really ill constructed, and there's not a lot of parts that I think that they went into the season even if it did go off the rails. Well, hey, we'll have these guys that people will want later on, so maybe we can get some assets for them. I don't even know if that's the case going into the rest of the season right now.
I got one last question to ask you, Shaw, about this, and I think it goes to the point of why David Fizdale was hired to begin with. They said that one of the main reasons why David Fizdale was being hired was because of the relationship that he has with the players, right? And that his cachet would help, bring a LeBron James over, might bring a Kyrie Irving over. Okay. Now understanding that is not what's going to cut it in order to bring high profile players to come play for this organization. And maybe to some degree, maybe having a couple of lottery picks on your roster, some exciting players here or there on your roster. I'm curious from you, Shaw. What do you think it's going to take if you are the New York Knicks organization? What do you think it's going to take to revive the idea of someone wanting to come and play for your organization? Is it more the players? Is it more the organization? Is it the owner? What do you think is the first dynamic that needs to completely be reformed before we actually can get to that point of putting the Knicks organization as a viable team that someone really, truly, who has some championship cachet wants to come play for? Like, what would be the incentive for that?
I think the book on Dolan is so wide open when it comes to the league and the players and their thoughts on him and the organization, until he's really willing to let go or not be there at all. I think that's the first key. While Mills and Perry are the next up in terms of scapegoats, the lone consistent person in all of this has always been Dolan. And again, it's to the point now where players know and they talk and they're just like, listen, that's an organization you don't want to go to because of the ownership specifically. And I don't know that while he's there, like that can change. And even if he were to fire Perry and Mills or what the case be, and then you bring in whoever as a general manager outside of Masai, I don't know that they could be able to convince even one player to get there and to be and to say like how Amari did years ago was like, all right, well, I'll be the first one to come back to try to bring the lore back. And it happened in a very, very, very minor form with him and Melo for a little bit, but nothing to the point where they're ever championship level contenders. So I think it starts there. And maybe at some point in 2 years from now, RJ Barrett is a guy who's, challenging to be an all-star in the Eastern Conference and things of that nature. Maybe he can be the lighthouse, if you will, and a guy who can maybe recruit some others, or maybe even some others from his draft class, so to speak. But I think they're a long way away from that right now.
New York Knicks, man, definitely a team that is on a downward spiral, like straight. I mean, they're not stopping at hell. They've already done past that point. And yet this is just another example of really one of the most traditionally, regarded franchises, back when Dolan's father owned this franchise, that is just completely in disarray. And we can only hope that this is a true wake-up call. Like I said, man, this organization needs a straight up intervention. I think if I'm Adam Silver, I would seriously weigh in and consider, what this is doing, not just to the brand, but also the entertainment value, and what this could mean moving forward. Nobody likes seeing this New York Knicks organization being in the state that it's in. We want to see them viable. We want to see them competitive. And right now, they're just there's no indications right now that they are trending towards getting to that particular point. And no 19-year-old named RJ Barrett is going to help elevate them out of the things that he has no control over, which is clearly above his shoulders and above his pay grade. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And topic for The Drop: NBA finally is starting to open up the doors a little bit. Well, let me not say that. Organizations are opening up the doors a little bit now because there are a ton of players who have been signed on. And now they are in a position, or at least by December 15th, they'll be in a position where they can be in considerations for possible trades. And just recently, Shaw, as we get right into that part of the season, as we start getting a little bit closer now to the halfway point, we get a little bit closer now to possible trade deadline, shortly thereafter. Now, all of a sudden, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got their ears open. They say, hey, anybody want my man Love? We can give you some love. Everybody in the world needs love. So how does the fact that now that Kevin Love, in which there are reports that the Cavaliers are open to possible trade talks that would involve Kevin Love, how is that impacting the plethora of players now that are available with this December 15th time frame where players are eligible for possible trades?
It just goes to shows, you just can't take what anybody says in earlier part of the season, at face value, because things change. And I think any common person looking at the situation is thinking, what is Kevin Love doing on the Cavs right now? Like, he's just wasting away. He serves no purpose for this organization. They need to be moving and working around Garland and Sexton as the duo that they're trying to build around. Tristan is also going to get thrown into this, especially with an expiring deal this year. So I think Love's ability to now, or at least the Cavs' willingness to listen to potential moves on him, opens up a plethora of options around the league. As you alluded to, December 15th, a lot of guys can be traded. And just because of that, it's not to say Love was actually one of those guys, but it just opens up the market for some different possibilities, especially when it comes to trying to match salaries and, including picks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Love has a lot of money left on his deal. $120 million is guaranteed right now, through 2023. And I think the biggest spot for him that everyone thought he was potentially going to go was Portland. and with them keeping Melo at now for the remainder of the year, like that probably rules that out. But there are teams that are still interested. Miami, Boston has been rumored, which I think is an interesting fit there. Based on their previous conversations years ago before he went to Cleveland. But I do think Kevin Love does, obviously he still brings rebounding. He still brings some elite level passing at that 4 and 5 position as well too, and he brings a 3-ball. So I think the market's going to be there for Love in general, but it is interesting to see that, because I think the first spot and the most intriguing spot for him was Portland, and now that's kind of dried up for him a little bit.
All right, so let me ask you something. Wouldn't it be kind of funny, the irony of things, that some 6 years ago, the Golden State Warriors were in conversations of possibly moving Kevin Love to the Golden State Warriors. But obviously, Timberwolves at that time, they wanted, Klay Thompson, right? Like, okay, sure, whatever. And then now, we come full circle where if you look at the Golden State Warriors, Shaw, and it at some point, I think people need to be, thinking about this. Golden State Warriors is one of the few teams where, they could feel good about having a bad record for this year, right? They're one of the few teams where they don't have to look at themselves in any level of shame if they don't get 500, if they don't make the playoffs, whatever the case may be. But would we hate this team more if they even considered the idea that maybe they wind up getting a guy like Kevin Love, maybe without even, if they need him, without even having to give up the players that would have been involved in any kind of trade rumor for Kevin Love some 5-6 years ago? That never happened. They wind up eventually getting him. They're like, just wait, just be patient, just wait. Because I could kind of see that. I can kind of see Kevin Love in a Golden State Warriors uniform if that was the case. I don't think it will, but I find it funny because a team like them would certainly use a guy like Love, on that roster.
Well, I'm going to counter here, and I think there's some opportunities maybe for Love, specifically. You look at a team like Phoenix, right? And their power forward situation, Sark is very good, but could he come in and play when Ayton gets back, play alongside Ayton and be an outside threat? As again, another guy who can pass. Phoenix has played well this year, competing for a playoff spot. That seems like a team as well too that could potentially make a move. I mean, and would a return to Minnesota be that outrageous? Playing alongside Cat as well too at that 4 spot. So I think a move to the West is probably most likely for him. I think that the Heat were also mentioned as a potential destination, maybe I alluded to a little bit earlier. But I don't think they want to upset their. But yeah, I don't think they want to upset their chemistry and their roster right now. Based on which is kind of what's going on. They're playing well, and then trying to integrate him now just seems a little not Pat Riley-ish. But again, they've apparently been sniffing around here a little bit. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for him in general. I don't think he's a good fit in a place like Orlando, but they definitely need some scoring on that team. And I know they're looking to maybe add that at the wing position, and they would potentially move Aaron Gordon. So, if you're the Cavs, would you do something for Gordon and Love? I mean, it's like Love's obviously a lot older and doesn't have quite the springs that Gordon does. But I don't think Aaron Gordon's a particularly great basketball player. And I think Love could probably bring some more there. But it seems like an odd fit for Clifford and the Magic there as well, too. But I think those are some of the teams that want to be active. And, maybe they sniff around Love just a little bit to see what's going on.
All right, so let's kind of peruse ourselves through some other possible players that, have opened up. Your man Jabari Parker, right? I mean, I don't know how realistic it is that there can be a turnaround for the Atlanta Hawks. I know that they have kind of stepped their game up a little bit, but they clearly still have a lot of holes to fill. And I think Lloyd Pierce, again, there's some question marks, whether or not he's gonna really have this team in a position where they're gonna be elevated, right? I understand they have some, injuries and stuff, but I think that you have to be realistic about what you could possibly get. You still when you look at this team, Shaw, this team in Atlanta is still young, and I think a guy like Jabari Parker can instantly provide a punch for some teams who do need some scoring at that front court position. I believe of the players that we see listed here, where you can strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, he would be one of those dudes. Where would you foresee him being at? And if you're the Atlanta Hawks, knowing that he's now available, do you try and move him to get something back for that?
Yeah, I mean that's tough. Yeah, I think Jabari's still 24 years old. He's not old by any stretch of the imagination. And there's not a. I don't think he's somebody that's angling to go to a winner, so to speak, where you feel like you have to do that. And I don't know. There's a lot of teams out there that want him in that vein. I think he's kind of perfect where he's at right now. Not to say that he doesn't get moved at some point, but it's hard to envision a perfect spot for Jabari. He's got a very friendly deal. I think it's $6.5 million, right now for over 13 over 2, and I think it's the player option on the second year there. So Jabari, again, he's not going to cost a whole lot. You don't have to make a whole lot of crazy salaries work, but he's not going anywhere to be a starter. You know what I mean? He's going somewhere. If they were to move him, it's to come off the bench, and he really was supposed to be a nice backup and a bench scorer for this Atlanta Hawks team in lieu of Collins. So they probably want to see what that looks like. After Collins comes back here in a couple weeks, and then maybe it ramps up a little bit. But Parker's not somebody who they're itching to kind of get rid of in my estimation. And I think when I go back into it. Go ahead.
No. Well, I was gonna say, how unrealistic would it be to see maybe Jabari Parker play in New York, to play alongside R.J. Barrett?
Well, I mean, they would have to get rid of everything else they have.
What makes you think they are?
Position as Morris.
Like, we were just talking about that a few moments ago. What makes you think they won't? Right? Like,
well, but then like the flip side is who wants those guys? Is what I'm saying. So who do you unload off Randall and Morris and Portis and those guys to? Who wants those guys so that you can bring in a Jabari? I don't know. I'm not out on Jabari as a guy who can be a contributor. Again, I think at 24 years old, I know he can score. I know he can rebound. Defense still is lacking a little bit of something, but he's trying better on that end too. And he's also, been working on his ball handling. So he's been a better player in recent years than I think a lot of people have given him credit for. He was actually really good in Washington last year, just battled some injuries and things. But he's somebody that I think can help another team outside of there. But I see no reason for Atlanta to make a move in the interim term. I think of a team that, we talk about a lot through the course of the season, who could be potential buyers is Charlotte. They've been ultra competitive. And do they feel like they need to shore up that front court situation? So Bridges in Washington, have been good. Do you maybe get a power forward, a true starting power forward, or maybe even a center outside of Zeller and Biyombo to let those guys fall back a little bit and let Rozier and Graham have somebody that they can kind of rely on down low? I think that's something that they're definitely missing this year, especially with the emergence of Graham. And Charlotte, I could see potentially being buyers, but they need to get rid of contracts like Marvin Williams and Kitty Gilchrist and things of that nature that we've talked about ad nauseum on this show. I just don't know that they're going to have the ability to do that.
Well, listen, I am of the mindset where what New York can't fix, allow Portland to, right? Portland just went ahead and got themselves Carmelo Anthony. He seems to have done pretty nicely, former New York Knicks player. And listen, they just wound up losing Rodney Hood for the rest of this year. You don't mean to tell me that a guy like Bobby Portis or maybe even a Julius Randle can't probably help out this Portland Trailblazers team and their roster? To me, I can see something more realistic in that particular realm. Definitely can take the burden off of where Carmelo can continue to do what he does. Go in there and score the basketball. You get like some kind of other asset, some kind of other player to come in there and help, shore up that front court for Portland, especially on these short-term deals that the New York Knicks have, could play in Portland's favor. Am I out of bounds thinking in that kind of context?
No, not necessarily. And again, I think Portland they're always going to be looking to do something. Especially with the start that they've had this year and the injuries that they're facing. They also got to remember Nurkic may be back at some point this year, so they're going to figure out how that works along with Whiteside, who's played relatively well, and hasn't complained too much. So they have some things they just got to figure out roster-wise. But I think for them, it's about winning and what pieces fit to make that work. Outside of that, I think we all know, even in Oklahoma City, Gallinari and Chris Paul, those guys, while they're not December 15th eligible, they're already eligible. They can be moved, at any point. I think there are guys that, at some point may also be on the move. OKC, again, has been a little bit more competitive than some people would have thought. But, is there a fit for them? And I know Chris Paul, his market is really, really dry right now. But Gallo seems to be a guy, like, if you're looking for, again, a 3-4 or more of a 4 situation, he's somebody that really would make some sense. And again, same thing. If you're Orlando, even if you're San Antonio, you know what I mean? You're looking for some scoring punch somewhere along the way, and bringing up the Spurs. Do they punt and go the other way where they move off of LMA and DeMar DeRozan? All these things we're going to start to hear about and start to consider, because it's just not working for some teams. And while some teams are better than expected, that doesn't mean that they should hold on to these potential players that can yield them some assets that can make them even better in the future.
All right, so when we look at we've looked at teams, and I know like part of my perspective has always been where trying to elevate teams that clearly are playoff driven. Let's talk about teams that may be playoff ridden, right? I look at teams like, say, the Houston Rockets. When I think about that roster, Shaw, does it impress you? Are there players that you can certainly see that can benefit, that can help this basketball team, be better? Or should they shred some of these players that they have because they're really not offering anything for them? And eventually, see, to me, when I think about this at times as well, too, I also think about at some point, you're going to have to start improving this roster. You're not going to be able to completely improve it with the superstar players that you have. You're locked in with those guys. So unless you're trading up beyond those type of players, which how can you? Because you arguably have 2 of the top 10 players in the NBA. The rest of this roster that you look at, you got to shred guys that are going to have to eventually they're not giving you anything. They're not going to elevate beyond where they are. So that means you need to start putting in some players that you can see some upside, some potential, something where they can help complement some of the things that you still think are lacking for them not being championship caliber. So when I look at the Houston Rockets, I'm saying to myself, all right, what about this the roster isn't that they shouldn't look to improve upon, because they've got a bunch of names, that are available for what they've put together. And I would think that if you are Houston and you know where your team sits, that you actually make a concerted effort to look in and say, can we get somebody else who might be able to fill in for these guys and who might be able to do more than what we're already getting?
I think your point is extremely valid. And in a perfect world, the Rockets would have a different way of roster construction. Now, we all know Morey is willing to make moves and shake things up. And who's to say that he doesn't try to go out there and get a third star, right, at this point? But the issue that you have with Houston, as we all know, is the style of play they have. It's 2 ball dominant with Harden and Westbrook. And everybody else is just kind of, with their hands in their pockets, twiddling their thumbs, like, all right, well, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. I guess I'll go on the other end and play defense. So what guys out there are going to want to willingly come into that system? And not to say that Harden doesn't make better and, he doesn't pass the ball, etc. I mean, I know people are very, very split on his style of play when it comes to that, but it is a hard thing to assimilate to. If you're another player trying to come to this roster. Now, again, if Morey trades for you, you got to come there, you got to try to produce. But you have to really have an intentional conversation with that player as you're bringing him in to say, hey, here's what we're doing, and here you can fit in. Otherwise, you bring in somebody who can now end up becoming a malcontent and then blowing up your locker room for no reason. The guys on this roster right now seem to be, as you allude to, like fringish, if you will, and just really understand their place. You can't bring in somebody here who's looking to try to do more, especially with Russ and Harden being as ball dominant as they are.
Man, so much work to do, right? And we're not even halfway with the NBA and the NBA season. Let me ask you this: would you like to see something major happen this early in the season as far as a trade goes?
Yeah, I always do. I mean, I'm all for fireworks, bro. Like anytime we can kind of get the gunshots going and get things popping, I'm with that. I just feel like, as we alluded to, Love is probably the biggest name on the market. That could potentially be moved, and I think that's followed by maybe Chris Paul and Gallo in OKC. Steven Adams as well too is a name to watch. I know Boston has some interest there. I mean, that's been reported out. And he's somebody who can definitely be a difference maker, especially on the defensive side of things too. But you just don't know what, like right now, what from all other reports, the asking price for Adams is pretty astronomical. So it doesn't look like something that's going to get done there in any way, shape, or form. But you just don't know how some of the locker room discontent that might be happening. I'm kind of watching this situation in Chicago right now. I think off air we talked about maybe Thaddeus Young, and I don't think Thaddeus Young is unhappy, but I don't know how happy Markkanen is right now playing with this. Chris Dunn is a guy too who's struggling to get minutes. He's playing well in the minutes he's getting, but he's kind of a forgotten soul there. So those are guys who could potentially move, but those aren't major names, as you alluded to.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, but good stuff all around. No question. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. As we mentioned in our segment of The Drop, Rodney Hood, unfortunately, no ornaments under his, man. He's done for the year. And that sucks. Last year, breakout. This year, a lot of expectations, but unfortunately, another ACL, MCL injury, man. Takes another player out for the season.
Yeah, I believe it's Achilles, and with Hood, again, we poked fun at him a little bit. We never want to see anybody get hurt, so prayers to him, and hope he gets back pretty soon. Next year, hopefully at some point. This Portland team just continues to be just marred with injuries to key guys for them, man. So hopefully that organization can find some good fortune soon.
All right. Out in Golden State, not so great news. Steph Curry undergoes a second surgery under the left hand that he broke. Now, all signs are saying that he still should be expected to be healthy come February. But listen, man, I'm somebody who has the Midas touch like Steph Curry. I don't want nobody messing with my hand more than they need to.
Yeah, I think it was to remove the screws, so they had to go back there and get that done. But he wants to come back. I commend him for it, but this is a lost season. So I don't know what he's doing. Hopefully he just takes all the time he needs and he's not back. He absolutely is 100%. But the Warriors obviously need all the help they can get, going into the rest of this year. But I think again, it's a lost season for GSW. So hopefully Curry, takes that in mind before he rushes back too soon.
All right. And finally, Shaw, NBA coaches aren't fans of the coaching challenge. Duh.
What a shocker, right? It's just, I forget what the percentage is right now, but
maybe our byline should be NBA coaches, NBA fans, NBA analysts, NBA commentators. How about the whole damn NBA just ain't fans of this damn coaching challenge? For the few who do, how much they paying you?
It could be a one and done for real right now. It doesn't seem like it's something that is really getting a whole lot of traction. Referees are just becoming under more scrutiny, and refs and coaches still don't know what can we challenge. Well, you sure? And all kinds of stuff is happening. And then we had the James Harden no dunk situation a little while ago earlier in the week, and just a mess of things right now. So the league will definitely take a look at this, and they're too proud to quit it in the middle of the season, but it may definitely get reevaluated over the course of the summer.
Well, I think, Shaw, that while this may have had the best intentions, I think the only time that you would have really been the only time I think you should be doing this is when you're innovating and enhancing things with reference to the challenge, like the way that the game is being called and in challenging it. This shouldn't be coming in after we have already been talking about and scrutinizing the way that the games are being refereed. And I think that's just what's already causing its doom. If we're already questioning things that we didn't think that are necessary for coaching challenges to be there for, and now we have the coaching challenges and they're not even as effective as I think we think that they should be, it just makes it look all bad. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. Like, I agree with you. It may be a one and done. I hope it's a one and done, because I think that they need to go back to the drawing board and readdress this. I think this just comes back to fundamental, get these guys back inside and really definitively lay out and be consistent with what you're calling on a night in, night out basis. Because now more than ever, we are so scrutinizing so many missed calls and, calls that should be reversed and shouldn't be reversed. It's starting to look like the NFL right now, which I don't think that the NBA wants to get to that place.
No, they don't. So hopefully we can ride out and avoid, too many bad calls or missed calls or whatever it is, coaching challenges in general throughout the season, and again, reevaluate and regroup over the course of the summer into the 2021-22 season. Where are we going into? Yeah, 2021-21 season. There we go. Got it right.
Didn't want to throw you off on that one too. We might have to throw out the challenge for that one, right?
Oh, throw it out there. I'm definitely losing.
Wonderful show this week, Shaw. I mean, obviously the big, topic for us was just this whole thing going on with David Fizdale, New York Knicks organization, the disarray, the hoof spot that's taking place right now with them. Yeah, man, I really feel bad for New York Knicks fans. Before I thought that their grievances, it's just too much. But now, I mean, it's at a point, man, where, like I said, man, there needs to be an intervention. It really does. There just comes a point where, the NBA's got to step in and be like, look, man, we can't have you doing this to us anymore, man. This is great for New York Post, but it ain't great for the rest of the NBA, man. We gotta figure something out, man. Something's got to change.
Yeah, well, they've become the laughing stock, and again, we all agree that the league is just better if the Knicks are competitive in some aspect, just because of the aura that's centered around that organization, that city in general. But they're a long way away from relevancy right now. That's an unfortunate thing, and I don't see that narrative changing anytime soon.
All right, once again, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw. We appreciate you guys. We do. We'll catch up with you next time.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself.
Attorney CPA Joe Cordell.
An effective defense often hinges on sophisticated strategies relating to income tax projections, business valuations, spousal support claims. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills. By the way, unless you're in Missouri or Illinois, I'm not licensed in your state, but that's okay. Our attorneys in your state are.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Miami area attorneys, a partner men can count on. Online at CordellCordell.com. That's CordellCordell.com. Offices in Miami and by appointment only in Fort Lauderdale and Dadeland. Se habla español. Legal services available in English and Spanish.
Cordell & Cordell, Miami, Florida. Lisa Cargas, Florida resident partner. Announcers are not licensed attorneys.
It's decorating with Duncan.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, and look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in at Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.